When it comes to smartphones, the word affordable might not mean what it used to, but compared to the $1,300 flagships on the market these days, the $700 to $800 that companies like Samsung and OnePlus are asking for their entry-level flagships seem pretty reasonable. The best part is that for that price, you really don't need to make many sacrifices compared to the more premium options, so let's explore how the Galaxy S20 FE and OnePlus 8T compare and see just how much smartphone you can get for under $1,000. So right off the bat, let's talk about pricing. The OnePlus 8T runs $750 in the US, and for that money, you're getting 256GB of storage and 12GB of RAM. By comparison, the S20 FE starts $50 cheaper at $700, with half the storage and RAM at 128 and 6GB respectively. But that storage is expandable, and for an extra $70, you can match the 8T's internal storage at 256GB. In the 2 months since its launch though, the Galaxy S20 FE has already gone on sale a handful of times, and at the time of publishing this video, the baseline model is down to just $549 through popular retailers. Of course, that deal isn't gonna last forever, but a $200 gap between these devices certainly changes the conversation a bit, so you'll want to double check the pricing on each phone before you make any decisions. With pricing out of the way, let's look at the hardware, and the first thing I noticed is just how similar these designs are. Whether you want to call it blatant copying or just converging design language, both the S20 FE and the 8T feature curved backings with aluminum mid-frames and prominent camera bumps in the upper left corner. The biggest difference between the two is build materials. The S20 FE's back is made of polycarbonate, aka plastic, while the OnePlus 8T has a more familiar glass back. Now, I really like the matte glass that OnePlus used on the 8 and 8 Pro, but the 8T has a slightly glossier finish that I'm not a big fan of, and of course the S20 FE's plastic backing should hold up better in the event of a fall. Inside of each phone is a Snapdragon 865 processor and a 4500 mAh battery, which should be more than enough to get through a full day of even heavy use. On the S20 FE, you also get IP68 water and dust resistance, along with 15-watt wireless charging and even 5-watt reverse wireless charging, none of which is available on the 8T, but OnePlus has its own advantage in the form of its 65-watt wired charging, which can top up the battery on the 8T from 0 to 100% in just 39 minutes. As far as displays go, both phones are pretty evenly matched with a roughly 6.5-inch 1080p panel and the same 120Hz refresh rate. Both displays are also HDR10 Plus compatible, but while both look fantastic in terms of color and viewing angles, I'd give the S20 FE a slight edge for being a bit brighter in outdoor use. Software is always a subjective comparison, but both Samsung's One UI and OnePlus's Oxygen OS offer a fantastic Android experience. One UI 2.5 on the S20 FE has a ton of useful features like DeX and improved Samsung Notes, and overall just feels more refined than previous iterations of Samsung interfaces. Combined with the 120Hz display, it feels fast and responsive, and for better or worse, Samsung offers a massive library of alternatives to Google's first-party apps. Now, OnePlus used to be known for its super clean, pixel-like software, but these days with Oxygen OS 11, the 8T feels a lot more like the S20 FE than it does something like the Pixel 5. That's not all bad. It means that you get Android 11 along with some of One UI's benefits like the menu overscroll feature that makes it easier to reach items at the top of a list. But it also means that Oxygen OS just doesn't feel quite as streamlined as it used to, and if you've used other OnePlus devices in the past, this is gonna take some adjusting. If you want to know more about the changes made in Oxygen OS 11, we've got a whole video going over it all. I think I still lean a little bit towards Oxygen OS because I just don't use many of Samsung's own services, but in all honesty, the software on both of these phones feels very similar. If nothing else, I'd give OnePlus some points here for having Android 11 early, but it's just a matter of time until Samsung levels the playing field since both companies have committed to at least 3 years of software support for their devices. So let's talk about the cameras, because I think that's where the biggest differences between these two phones really shine through. The 8T features the same 48 megapixel primary sensor found on the OnePlus 8, joined by a 16 megapixel ultra-wide, a 5 megapixel macro sensor, and a 2 megapixel monochrome filter. The S20 FE also borrows from its predecessors with the same 12 megapixel camera found on the S20, along with a 12 megapixel wide angle and an 8 megapixel 3x telephoto sensor. In terms of main camera performance, I think both phones do a pretty good job at capturing fine details and balancing exposure, and I'm pretty happy with the shots from either. Switch over to the secondary lenses though, and it's a bit of a different story. The S20 FE is able to grab wider shots using the ultra-wide lens thanks to its 0.5x perspective versus the 8T's 0.6x, and the 3x telephoto holds up immensely better than the digital zoom the 8T uses on its main sensor. Just look at this squirrel. Only in the shot from the S20 FE can you see that it really didn't want me to take its photo. So let's wrap this up by asking again, which of these phones is right for you? I think a lot of it comes down to current pricing. As I mentioned earlier, the S20 FE has already gone on sale quite a few times now, and if you can find it for considerably less than the OnePlus 8T, I think it's a no-brainer. You're getting a fantastic phone with top-end specs, a gorgeous 120Hz display, and 3 extremely versatile cameras. On the other hand, if you're shopping at full price, or you happen to find the OnePlus 8T at a discount, it's equally tempting for its more robust software, higher internal storage and RAM, and 65-watt wired charging. I'm quite a fan of both phones, but while I've typically favored OnePlus in the past, if I were buying right now, I'd have to choose the S20 FE for its better cameras and lower price. It's just insane that a phone this cheap could be so good. Let me know in the comments down below which phone you'd choose, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We're coming up on a new year, and that means lots of new content. As always, thanks for watching, and if you've got some spare time to kill, you should check out our 500th episode of the Android Central podcast, available in video form on the on-screen card. We'll see you next time.